A text says, "You're on my mind." A bouquet from 1-800-Flowers says, "You're my everything." Heartfelt moments belong in the real world, not just your phone. For 50 years, 1-800-Flowers has helped millions of people make memories that'll last a lifetime with gifts they'll cherish forever. Their expertly curated arrangements and gift baskets ship nationwide with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Don't wait for the next big moment. Make it when you visit 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast.
They got nude podcasting in Vegas.
I don't want to podcast in the nude.
No, numbnuts, you podcast with naked chicks, and you podcast for real. It says so right here.
Welcome back to another episode of Spawnography. I'm one of your hosts, Beer Sliden, pronouns they, them. Here with, as always,
George Marston, pronouns they, them, or she, her. And relevant to that, we're recording this on the Trans Day of Visibility.
It's the only day you can see us.
True. If you didn't know that we are sometimes invisibly trans, but also visibly, publicly trans, then now you know. And we're here podcasting about Spawn, and we're happy to have you along on this journey with us. If you got to here and you're just jumping in, then surprise, welcome, hello. If you've been listening any length of time for this show, you know who we are. So It's important. I just wanted to note that because it's important. And also bad shit's going on for trans people in America, so please make sure you are looking. Please make sure you're watching. Trans Day of Visibility should go both ways right now. So there you go.
Can't wait to get blamed for Christy Noem's husband.
Look, I don't.
Bimbofication is in the news.
It's wild.
Listen,
I don't have a problem with that. I think their hypocrisy is stunning, but also I hope it leads to a revelation for at least one person.
Byron, we support your journey.
Yeah,
wherever it takes you,
except towards Nazism and fascism. We don't support that part. We hope you're moving away from that on your journey to whoever you truly are.
Yeah.
There you go. I was watching some Invincible while I was eating dinner before this. I'm way behind on it, just catching up.
I think I only watched the first season, so
I was like halfway through the second season. It's fine. The thing that is interesting about it to me is there's a lot of Spawn in it in some ways, in the sense that Spawn
literally in the comics.
Well, true. Spawn is also kind of an underdog a lot of the time. He's often kind of facing, especially in the early days, facing down these huge threats that he can barely, defeat. There was that whole string of stories where he was just constantly getting impaled, to the point where he got impaled once and still had the hole in his chest. Yeah. So it didn't even hurt him. So, but I will say the thing about Spawn is it's ultimately got a horror comic aspect. Mm-hmm. So that sort of underdog thing feels very natural. Sometimes with Invincible, the comic and the show, it kind of feels like I'd really just love to see a player win. You know what I mean? Not get his teeth knocked out for once.
I think that he kind of becomes the ultimate, as much as I think I've said this to people about Invincible, that I'm like, oh, it's kind of like the perfect Nightwing comic in a way.
In a way.
But the reality is, it is also like Kirkman being like, fuck you, I'll do my own Spider-Man.
Well, absolutely. It's Spider-Man meets Superman, basically. And sometimes I find the emotionality of it to be a little bit kind of shallow. in terms of especially the show. It has its big moments. There's an episode we just watched in season 2 that was really good. That ended on kind of a big, like, real emotional climax that really worked. But sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it feels like they're just like, we have a problem, but it's resolved. But also, I now have to get killed again by this fucking stupid shit. It's like, you don't want the heroes to be the weakest people in the show at all times. But I also
Is Kirkman
understand
kind of the
part of
king
it
of
is
that?
like, in a way,
You know,
I'll confess I'm not a huge fan of Robert Kirkman's
nor am
writing.
I.
Obviously, he knows what the fuck he's doing in the world of comics. Everything he does is extremely successful among fans and often critics. So just one of those things. I think I've talked before about seeing him on a panel with Todd McFarlane years ago, where I didn't love some of the message they were saying, but I think it's more the way they were communicating it that I was really responding to, because they were talking about how to capitalize on your ideas and how to independently capitalize on your ideas. But it was very focused on, like, all you got to do is sell it to Hollywood. And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
great advice. Thanks. Glad I thought of that.
That has that's I think I've definitely talked about it on this show that I covered Atomic Farm Spotlight panel, and that's kind of what got me a little bit fascinated by him, because yes, it did focus on like, hey, the reality is that the way this business works is you just need to be in that top 300, and you have to be the highest thing that
Yeah,
hasn't already been optioned, and
absolutely.
that being kind of like your road to continued success, like that,
Right.
like just
Well,
get it out there, and like if it exists, somebody else will want it probably, and it'll lead you to more opportunities.
Well, and I think the ultimate message that they're, in both cases, it seems like Todd in particular is really trying to get across is, if you want to succeed, you got to own your shit, both in terms
Yeah.
of your creative input and the time you put into it, and also the work you put into getting it into the world.
Yeah.
So I think that ultimately, when you strip away some of the capitalist kind of like atmosphere about it, you get to the core of it, which is really ultimately that people who create things should have ownership over those things, which is really a very socialist ideal.
Yeah. And
Kind of, in many ways, the ultimate socialist ideal.
I think what's also kind of interesting for both Todd and Kirkman is like they both have pretty big falling outs with Marvel, obviously, but they also forge their own way in such a way that, like, in a lot of ways, Kirkman taking over like G.I. Joe and Transformers now is
Oh, and
such
making it such a big
is
success.
yeah, like is such a fuck you. I never needed you, and like
I,
it's
I
it's kind
mean,
of cool to see. I get that, like, we're still talking about like corporate IP and we're still talking about like whatever, but like the fact that Skybound, as an extension of Image Comics, has the Energon universe and is doing cool stuff with that, and people are
yeah.
responding to it, is really, really cool. And it feels like it's getting us back to, I know that every other week we're always like comics are dying, and we've been doing that on loop for like 40 years, but like it does feel like we're getting back to a place where Marvel and DC are not the only players that, uh, and there's more than just Image as a third option. That there's also these little enclaves where you're seeing what IDW is doing with the Turtles for
Mhm.
so long. Like, we're getting issue 300. Holy shit!
Yeah, and
It's
well,
encouraging.
licensed comics are kind of doing better right now in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, look at Enemy of the Pod. We talk about it all the time. David Pepos and Space Ghost,
Crushing it.
continually a fan favorite, and it sells well enough that he's cooking along, telling a great story. And there's so much at Marvel and DC that just doesn't. I'm trying to think
Mainline.
how to say this,
I don't
which
want to
is,
offend creators that are working on those books right now, but I
I
do
don't
think
think they're given a lot of runway to do their best work.
that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Like,
I
I
think,
don't think they're given the chance.
yeah, I think that's why the absolute and ultimate universes have popped off more than the mainline universes at this point. Like, I was like looking at like, oh, what new comics are coming out? We're doing Amazing Spider-Man Symbi, who's like a little symbiote creature.
Yeah, I don't know,
That's like
dude.
a, that's like a spider pig or something. I don't.
Well, they just announced the Hellfire Murder, where at the new Hellfire Gala there will be a big important murder of some mutant, and it'll be a whodunit, and it's literally just a redo of fucking the Trial of Magneto from
But
like the Krakoa age. And it's just like we're just doing these cover band versions of our own shit.
yeah, and so quickly too. Like I mean, listen, we talk about X-Men a lot on this podcast, but this current run of X-Men just feels like they threw away Krakoa and then they realized, oh fuck, that's the thing people cared about. How do we kind of get back to it? And I'm not saying that to dismiss the work that Jed McKay and Gail Simone and Eve Ewing
Sure.
have done. I think that there are some good things and stops and starts in all of those runs. It's crazy to me that Gail Simone is going to be like have written the fourth most issues of Uncanny X-Men in like a
Well,
couple months.
yeah. And I mean, it shows you how long Claremont's run was compared to the average run on the title. You know, I think Scott Lobdell is number 2 because he worked on it throughout the 90s. I think he's 2 or 3. I'm almost certain.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, you know, first off, there's a reason Robert Kirkman became an Image partner. You know what I mean? He's able to fit in really well over there. And the other thing is the X-Men line. I don't have any insider insight or anything like that. You know, I'm in the journalism side of the comic industry, but I don't, unless I'm interviewing someone and getting it
Right.
from their mouth or whatever.
Nobody's giving you
But
any
just
scoops.
based on, no, yeah, I mean, I'm more involved in movies and shit right now anyway. Where I write at Total Film /Games Radar Plus /Newsarama, whose opinions are not reflected by this podcast on any level, if you can believe that.
Good to know.
I think that just based on the way it was marketed and the interviews that were done, especially when it started and that first chunk of it, it's really kind of just regressive, going back to Hated and Feared, whatever. It's like if we got Spawn back to the alley, but it wasn't the big climax of like some finality where we're left with a path forward. He's not fighting the same people. He's not facing the same problems. In a way, it's a similar kind of reset, but like, look, here's another part of the problem with the X-Men line in particular, if we're just talking comics.
Sure.
They were coming up against X-Men 97. And if the revival of the cartoon from 30 years ago feels more fresh and relevant than the comic story you're telling, you're not going to be
doing
crushing
something
it.
wrong. Yeah. Well,
and I'm not saying copy X-Men 97, but like they could have maybe gotten back to a similar type of status quo if they had decided to make the X-Men seem triumphant in any way instead of underdogs, and also maybe had like, I don't know, the X-Men title with all the big guns, Wolverine, Storm, Cyclops, all those, and then have like Uncanny be the like younger generation or whatever, something like that, where you have all these A-listers in a book with a proven concept. Maybe you can get away with some of the like nostalgia driven approach. I think I've said this before on the podcast too. The X-Men is the one franchise that I think you absolutely cannot rely on nostalgia for, because everyone has that nostalgic love for the characters, but the runs that really work and stand out are the ones that do something new with them, that take them away from that original Hated and Feared kind of concept. So, you know, it just feels regressive.
I think season 2 of X-Men 97 is going to be a really big fulcrum point for what happens. Like how it's received is going to be really important, because it's very clear from season 1 that the goal was to get us out of the 90s in terms of what story we're telling.
Right. And even the decade,
and to get us
traveling across time.
Well, and to get us to new X-Men. Like we know we're getting like the new X-Men costumes and stuff in the show.
Right.
So, and you know, Jay and Miles are winding down, and they're covering Morrison. They just put out their first, as we're recording this, they just put out their first episode about Morrison's run, about E's for Extinction, and you know, one of my all-time favorite arcs, but one of the most. That is how you put the X-Men on the back foot in a way that now the story you're telling becomes extremely it just has
Well, it's
stakes. It has
new.
it's
It was
driven and it's
something that
new.
we hadn't seen in that way before,
They just had never lost on
stylistically,
that level.
narratively. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, even on that level, even on the level of the plot, but from a just a narrative standpoint, it's really the first X-Men in a long time that didn't feel like it was either riding on Claremont's coattails or trying to repeat his success.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the 90s in many ways felt like a prolonged effort to maintain the concept of what X-Men became under Chris Claremont while distancing itself from the stories and like some of the main characters of those of the Claremont run. Like, you had Kitty and Excalibur instead of
Mm-hmm.
X-Men, along with Nightcrawler. Colossus was dead for a long time.
Yeah.
They
Well,
just took a lot
also,
of those characters off the board. Storm isn't even really a new X-Men, it's kind of a limited team. They brought in Emma Frost. There's a lot new there. And
yeah.
even the concepts that they're bringing in about what they're dealing with and facing is new. And of course, there's the hamstringing of the Zorn plot line with the
Yeah.
Magneto editorial edict and the Sublime arc and all that stuff. But it's kind of undeniable that New X-Men in particular was something interesting. And I would compare that more to what has happened with Spawn in the sense that we've got a new artistic direction and vision. We've got a new kind of narrative style in a way.
Mm-hmm.
We're now kind of easing back in with these issues we're going to talk about, I think, especially we're now kind of easing back into a bit of a Spawn routine where
Mm-hmm.
like we're establishing the new stakes, we're establishing the new problems that the new world still has and the old ones are still going to have to face, but it still took a step forward through that
Right.
story where it left behind that huge thing. And in a way you could say Krakoa is very similar to the ending where it's like, oh, the world is born, destroyed, etc., etc. But I don't think the dismount was great, and I don't think the run after it has been at the level of the best parts of Krakoa.
I think that the problem with the X-Men is everybody tries to go back to the metaphor.
And it's kind of tired. The metaphor
And
needs to be renewed.
Well, it gets really tough also because the metaphor has to continually change because like people in our real world are oppressed in new and exciting ways, like every day, in a
Oh
way that
God.
also the metaphor falls a little bit apart because it cannot be a perfect minority metaphor because the
Because
trans
they have
girl that
superpowers and
right
they
that's what I'm
can
saying, like the,
respond
the
to
the
like
trans girl that lives down the hall from you is not a threat to you
no,
in any
most
way,
of us
shape, or
don't even
form.
have optic blasts.
Right.
There are
Exactly.
exceptions. But
Like black people don't have claws coming out of their hands.
no,
Like
immigrants don't have the power to disrupt your life.
right. They're not
Truly they
telepaths,
don't. They just want what we all want, which is to work our jobs, profit from our labor specifically, and be cut in on the
and
ownership
be
of
fucking
our
left
own
alone.
product, and to be left alone with our families to live our lives. Like, that's the thing.
So I think that that's the other thing that becomes a little bit of a problem with. I don't want. This is not an X-Men podcast, so we're gonna stop talking about X-Men soon. But it does become a
Don't
part of
worry,
the
I've
struggle.
peppered in some Spawn here.
Yeah, I know. It becomes part of the problem, and I'm gonna bring this back to Spawn. It becomes part of the problem. So the problem with comic book storytelling in general is if the story can never end, then how can you satisfyingly keep juggling characters? I think Spawn's in an interesting place right now because one, Spawn doesn't have the weight of something like that kind of metaphor on his shoulders. He does have the larger heaven and hell, are you a good person kind of thing that I
Right.
actually think is really interesting because most superheroes, like Superman, does not really fret about being a good person. We just like know Superman is good. Bruce Wayne, we like know he's good, even if maybe his methods might be a little rough sometimes, or he has to make an exception or something, right?
Right.
Spider-Man is good, right? Unless he's corrupted in some way. Spawn is actually dealing with something different here, which is I know myself, and I know myself to be good. However, I'm being told that I am not, and that the world that I've created ostensibly is corrupt in its essence. And if I can only create something broken, was I actually good in the first place? And I think that's
Well,
actually a really interesting question.
I agree completely. And I also think it's interesting, while we're talking about this, we may have come to this before, but in a lot of ways, it's really reflective what Spawn goes through in these comics of the journey of kind of Todd McFarlane and Image Comics, where he has to go through these two like overarching masters that control the destiny of everyone, come out on top over both of them through his own force of will and his own ability to seize the talent and power that's handed to him, and to try and create a reset where at least there's a blank slate. At least whether you're good or bad, you have control of your own destiny and your own ultimate destiny.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, again, when we get back to that ethos we were talking about, that's really the core of the Todd McFarlane ethos. Is you want ownership of your own destiny. You want ownership of the fruits of your labor. You want ownership of your creative vision and ideas. And you want all of those things to culminate in you being able to live your life in pursuit of those artistic concepts. And I think, I mentioned capitalism, socialism, all that stuff earlier. I'm not accusing anyone of being any specific thing. I mean, provably capitalist because they are doing those things and maybe they're not perfect at it. But I think on a philosophical level, the idea of I want ownership of my own stuff and I want to be the one who gets the reward, the profit, and the product of my own labor. And I think that that is a core principle for a lot of people, whatever economic or political structure they apply to. And I'm not both sidesing, I'm just saying ultimately that desire to have control over your own destiny through the levers of power that are given to you by the world,
Mm-hmm.
I think is exactly what Spawn is about.
Yeah. Yeah. That is absolutely true. And, as we get into this arc a little bit, one thing I like about this as a bit of a turning point, not like everything is wrong, but David Hine and Brian Haberlin are trying to prove to us that they're trying to show us how, like, when Al wins, he does ultimately lose, but but that's the journey, is like, well, what is a loss, and is he such a broken character, or is he so broken as a person that he can't see the way forward? And how do the people around him, his community, whatever his community happens to be at any given time in this comic, lift him up or point him back in the right direction? We've said a lot of times that Al's not like a character who is much of a self-starter, right? And that is true of him from pretty much day one.
Right. Even
And his,
when he was world
when
famous government assassin, he had to
that's what I'm
take
saying.
orders.
He's a gun, right? He gets pointed at things. However, he really, once he's left to his own devices, he's like a little bit lost. And, we're going to explore some of why that's the case in this arc. And I like that. And we talked a little bit before we, started recording about, our kind of thoughts and the direction of the book. We do know that Al himself is on borrowed time for this title. So how does that story wrap up? What does
Right.
that story feel like when all is said and done? Can a character get an ending that feels satisfactory? We know now, in the future of 2026, that, well, Al fucking Simmons comes back. Al Simmons is Spawn.
Which
Like,
is always, that's
which is,
always what it's going to be in a comic.
yeah,
But, a lot of them don't even dare to try an actual ending. There are more modern ones, Superior Spider-Man, Krakoa, things like that are designed to ultimately have an end point.
yeah,
But a lot of the time, it's the end of an arc. It's not
right,
the end of like the concept of the book. And I think, we talk about superheroes as underdogs. I think Spawn is now back to that after having reached the pinnacle of godhood, basically, universal power, and still coming back and being humbled after the experience. When we get into these issues, which we'll do in just a second, he grapples with the change in his powers and the change in his abilities and his ability to affect the world around him. And on that note, Pierce, I think it's time to hit me with the credits for Spawn number 170.
All right, Spawn number 170. Todd McFarlane Image Comics present A Tale of Three Brothers, Part 1, Hell House. This is story by David Hine, pencils and inks by Brian Haberlin, lettering by Tom Warzakowski, colors by Andy Troy, production by Francis Takanaga and Diana Sanson, assistant editor Francis Takanaga, cover by Brian Haberlin. This one is dedicated to R.I.P. the great John Cassaday.
Yep. Rising star at this time for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Astonishing X-Men would have been a few years before this.
This would have been.
Yeah.
Yep. That was the one that really skyrocketed him.
And then Cap probably.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So
yeah.
it is a cool cover
on X-Men. Okay. In retrospect, fuck the writer, Yeah. But the art in that whole thing is good, and there are parts of that run that I really think are great, and then there are parts that are really fucking terrible, and then there's the fact that it's all written by Joss goddamn Whedon, and fuck that guy.
You know what happens to a frog when it's struck by lightning?
Same thing that happens to everything else.
Yep,
that's right.
A cool cover on this one. We get Ab and Zab back, and hey, I like Haberlin's take on them. They're kind of creepy and cool. The trade dress now with this like big kind of sidebar is pretty cool. I dig it. Somebody on Instagram did a bunch of like redesigned Marvel the letter boxes, but with like modern art in it, and I was like, yeah, those are cool. We should bring those back.
Oh, speaking of Instagram and social media, we didn't get to this at the top. Maybe we'll get to it at the end, but we did get a very interesting.
Oh yeah, we did get a letter. We just got a letter. We'll get to it at the end since we're getting into the books. At the end. Yeah. We'll do the back matter for ourselves at the end.
Yeah,
but we talked about this specifically that we were going to forget, and we did forget to do it at the top.
I know. So, looking at this, we got into the flow state about X-Men.
Yeah. Well.
Looking at the cover, this trade dress is very indicative of a lot of the trade dress experiments that were going on in this time. I mean, this was the right after Civil War, which had that really stark trade dress where half of the cover was white. And that was across the Marvel line. You had a lot of, I think this is right also just ahead of the era when Mark Millar, Patui, I spit on his name, was writing Fantastic Four, and they changed the trade dress to look more like a magazine, as in the world's greatest comic magazine. Yeah. So there was a lot of stuff. It was very de rigueur at this point to do a different trade dress like this.
Yeah, the Ultimate Universe was also doing its own kind of thing that made it very clear that those Ultimate comics were very separate from mainline continuity. So, and that was a few years before this, but
and I mean, this isn't the first time those things ever happened. You look at like the Marvel 25th anniversary trade with the character border, or like,
I love those.
Yeah, me too. The Marvel Knights. There's so many examples, but this era, we were getting these bigger kind of overarching, like kind of less cover, more trade dress things like this.
Yeah, more graphic design forward, I think, in a way to make things look a little bit more modern, which I think also probably less words on the cover, not like those 90s, like you'll never guess who dies this time.
Right.
Type stuff. We're really getting away from that, even though those are some classic covers through the 70s, 80s.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a classic cover design. And if someone did it again now, I'd probably be like, that's cool.
Yeah. Totally.
So yeah, Spawn number 170 starts off with Ab and Zab. They're sitting in a hotel room. I love the opening panel of Ab.
Incredible.
Looking at the eyeballs that are floating in water in a glass, and they kind of overlap with where his eyes would be, and he's singing Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those peepers? And this woman is kind of sitting here sort of in shock in this hotel room with them that is just covered in blood. Ab drinks the water full of eyeballs and kind of taunts her. And she says, I'll never tell anyone what happened here. And he says, no, I guess you won't. Hey, do you want me to send Momsy the pictures I took on my cell? Because she says she has to go see Momsy because it's Sunday. And he says, kidding, just get out of here. And he shows on his BlackBerry, essentially, or like his old Samsung,
It looks like a
probably the
razor or
first ever
something.
camera phone,
Yeah.
a picture of her holding a knife looking crazed. The implication being, as we turn the page, that she just murdered a bunch of people in this room at their behest. So they're kind of sitting in there, like through their manipulation, presumably, because of
Yeah.
course Ab and Zab are demons. And as for how they got here, as we'll be reminded soon, they are portal demons. So they open gates between worlds. And so, as we also recall, heaven and hell are not destroyed technically. They are in an alternate sort of frame of existence where they are now
They're like
separate and
disconnected.
walled off from Earth.
Yeah, they're disconnected from our reality. And as we saw in the arc where we met Clown again, that there's ways to open portals back to hell. That's fine. But Spawn has made it kind of his lot to close these portals, make sure that nothing. That's how he's protecting Earth. It's not that there's going to be a great
He's
incursion and
plugging the
he's going to
holes
fight
right
everybody.
now.
Yeah, exactly. He's sticking his fingers into the dam, kind of thing. Which, like that typically doesn't work out.
No, but we'll see how it goes. It's worked
Yeah.
for him sometimes, but he plugged some big leaks in the lead up to Armageddon, and we saw what that got him. So he's only got 2 thumbs and 4 fingers, baby. So those leaks better be close together. And this metaphor is getting as stretched as an overflowed dam. So,
boy.
yeah, he's not here. So Ab and Zab are sitting in this hotel room, and Zab's just kind of going bored. And
he fires his gun. We get one of them. We get
like,
one of the most Microsoft Word art sound effects I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. Blam! He just fires the gun off into the night, and Ab is trying to get him to go to Las Vegas to play nude paintball, where you shoot nude women with paintballs, which seems like something that was on like HBO's Real Sex or something like that, or like maybe in what was that was it Taboo magazine? That would just show you crazy shit from around the world. Like, anyway, I looked at that a lot when I was a teenager. It was kind of like the evil National Geographic.
Yeah. So Ab is it Ab or is it Zab?
Ab's the blonde one, Zab's the dark-haired one.
There we go. Ab is looking at this porn magazine, and he finds a little cutout in it that says "Hell House: Judgment awaits in the Hell House. Realistic enactments of evil perversions of a morally bankrupt society. See sodomites with their minds and blah 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 blah." Basically, it's
if you grew up or have spent time in the Deep South, like I have spent most of my life, you have seen these type of flyers everywhere. There are 100 million churches and hell houses. Hell house is a very common thing in the South. It's like an alternate to a haunted.
It's like a haunted house.
There's a great episode of King of the Hill about it. It's in season 2. It's called Halloween. Anyway, it is a very common thing to find these pamphlets. Pamphlets like this, chick tracts, things like that. People will give them out as tips instead of cash. Ugh. Or there'll be ones that look like a folded $20 bill, and you open it and it says gift certificate for the gift of eternal life through Jesus Christ at whatever the fuck church. And so, like, this being in a porno magazine probably happened a lot. And also, it's funny that the magazine is called Porn Bucket. We're making it big isn't about money.
So Ab really, he reads the thing. He says, cool. And we cut to Spawn, who's with Nyx. Most recently, they were in New Orleans, and she got her magic back from Mammon. And he's waking her up, and he's angry, and she's
Yeah, he's
not
screaming at her, "Wake up, you no good lying witch." And
yeah.
she is, as most women do, sleeping in a thong.
And bra, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Eh,
No one worries about a UTI ever. Uh and so yeah, he's like breathing fire at her, and then she suddenly starts awake, and Spawn is standing over her, but he's not like attacking her, he's just watching over her.
he's like looming. He's like looming in general across the scene, and
He
basically,
is he is cross-legged on top of this box. I'm going to tell a 10-second anecdote. You know Jonan Vasquez, Johnny the Homicidal
yeah, of course.
Maniac, Invader Zim, etc. I met him once at WonderCon 15 years ago. 15 years ago, like this week. I recall that when I met him, it was at like the slave labor graphics booth or whatever, and he was dressed in a trench coat, dressed like the Crow basically, and he was crouched on a chair with like a little gargoyle with his legs up, hunched over with his arms hanging in front of him. And I was like, that is the most on brand human being I have ever seen. So there you go. But yeah, it also looks a little weird because it looks like Nyx is wearing this like incredibly complex like lingerie, but it's actually that she has these tribal tattoos all over her body.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
very 2007. She was definitely like trying to keep Limp Bizkit in her heart. Um
But yeah, Spawn's looming around her, and she's kind of coming to, and she had a bad dream where he called her a witch, and he says you are one, and she asks if he's still mad at her because she did manipulate him to get her magic
you have to
back.
tell me if you're mad at me.
Yeah.
It's legally, you have to tell me if you're mad at me. And she also says that in her dream, Spawn roasted her alive and did stuff with chains.
Yeah, could have phrased that maybe a little bit better, but
Yeah, we're not doing phrasing. Anyway, she asks Spawn if he's mad, and he says, "No, I told you the things you did out of a sense of goodness, and that old life is behind me now. Everything that's come and gone, I have to let go of on that level," is basically, And he says, she's staying in the alley with him in this like broken down kind of building. Spawn is saying that he doesn't blame her for the way Mammon manipulated her, like you said. And he also explains that Mammon is kind of trying to figure out what Spawn can do now. He's kind of testing him. And
yeah.
she says, "So what are your powers?" And he says, "My costume is a symbiote. It feeds off me, and in return, it protects me. It's sentient, but most of the time it does exactly what I want." And he like lashes out with it. And he says, "You want me to breathe fire?" And then he does, which is one of his recent tricks. Pretty cool.
That's cool.
And she says, Jesus, and he goes, "Conjuring tricks. That's all it is, Nyx. Stage magic." And that made me think immediately of our good friend Harry Houdini, who did try to teach Spawn the power of summoning mundane items like
That's
a
true.
marble rather than a marble bust. But immediately made me think back to that in a way that
Somehow
felt
we always keep
tangible.
getting back to the Houdini arc.
It's the most important arc of Spawn.
In a lot of ways, yeah. But
It's the
Spawn,
key. It's the
Spawn is
Rosetta
having
Stone.
Spawn is
I
having
don't even
this.
know what the fuck that means.
Spawn is having that crisis of confidence we were kind of talking about before, where he said, I said I'd protect this world, but I don't know if I can. Something's missing. And Nyx explains that her magic connects her to the earth and connects her to, the ebb and flow of the tides and things like that. And that he needs to connect to the world around him. And she calls him Al, and he immediately kind of recoils at that and says, "Don't call me that." But she explains your connection to your humanity is the thing that you draw power from. We did get to see the power meter fairly recently, but since he's been reborn, we have no idea what that has to do with anything.
If that even plays in.
Especially with Malbolgia gone, which that was the big thing was.
And Al's impending kind of departure from the book. So
yeah,
these next couple pages are interesting. Nyx takes his hand and does a ritual to try and turn him back to a human. And the symbiote fades away from his hand. I really love the art the close-ups on the hands, the way that she's kind of tenderly holding him. And then he pulls back and says, "No, you're wrong, Nix. You can't heal me. Look again." And he shows her his hand, and bugs start crawling out of the
Pretty
folds of
cool.
his hand. Really creepy and disgusting, but it really works because, again, we know that Spawn feeds on the insects and the bugs and the creatures of the dirt of the earth.
You called out Brian Bolland when we first started covering Haberlin's art as a major influence. These types of panels remind me so much of Bolland's work on like later Animal Man, post Morrison.
Oh yeah,
Animal Man,
absolutely.
like Jamie Delano,
Absolutely.
where that book becomes a horror book in a way that it was not before, and it gets real fucking weird. Some of those covers. Early recommendation, folks. Read more than just the Grant Morrison Animal Man. That shit slams.
There's a lot of interesting stuff.
Really cool. I mean, some
even
of
Jeff Lemire's has some interesting stuff, especially the Travel Foreman art is super good.
We've talked about why Travel Foreman didn't stand that book.
Yeah, because his mom was super disturbed by it.
Well,
right?
And he was too. He was like, "I can't keep being on this book. This is too much."
I loved it. I would love to draw shit like that, just weird monsters and stuff. Anyway, I do. That's what I do at home. That's what I do a lot of the time.
I like what Al says here, though. He says he's showing her the bugs, and he says, you know, the forces I commune with are as natural as yours, but they represent the dark side of nature, creatures that scuttle through the sewers beneath your feet, creatures that haunt burial pits and cemeteries, creatures that feed on the corruption of the body, bats, crows, serpents, spiders, bugs like these. I see the world through their eyes. And it's a good little transition, especially since he mentioned a crow, because we're going to check back in with Ab and Zab as they've gone to find that hell house, and a crow lands just outside.
The hell house looks awesome. It's got like a devil and a skull hanging on it. I would buy it. I'd be like, cool, I'm turning this into a cool version of a hell house.
I'm going to keep all the outside decor, but
yeah, there's going to be stuff happening with chains. There's going to be all kinds of shit. And so Ab and Zab are like, trying to get inside, and there's a guy outside who's kind of like protesting them somehow. Meanwhile, a lady wearing a shirt that says God's Army, looking very surly, opens the door, and the preacher says, "Let's not turn away the visitors, Ada, the first ones you've had all week." And he kind of explains, we're not doing our theatrical show right now, but I'll show you around. There isn't much call for a kind of evangelizing since recent events, talking about how everyone survived Armageddon with some knowledge of what might have happened. Not exactly what happened.
Seems like nobody can agree, but they all had a shared moment
of like the absence of God and the devil and stuff. And so, the preacher brings them in, and she's kind of like, and Ada there is kind of skeptical. She says, "They don't look like churchgoers to me." They show Ab and Zab this video of like, a woman getting an abortion from a demon and shit like that, which is, I don't love that kind of necessarily imagery, but truly this is what hell houses are like. They show you bullshit sketches or skits and stuff like that.
It's and like super, super exaggerated.
And so he's talking to Ab and Zab, and he says, "The devil is real. I know. I've met him," which a lot of people did in their kind of rapture, And he says, "How can we keep our children from sin when they don't even believe in hell and redemption?" And Ab is kind of like, "Well, look, you're kind of using special effects here. We can help you turn this into a huge success. We'll make it like a hell house like you've never seen." So they go into the hallway and they do their portal thing where they paint all these symbols all over the walls and all over the doors that line the hallway. So they come in, the preacher and Ada, and the preacher's like, "Well, it's not what I expected." And Ab kind of reassures him, "It works. I promise you. It's going to be a real eye-opener." And Ada goes ahead. She says, "I'm not afraid, Pastor." They say, "Pick a door, any door." And she grabs one. And he says, Ab says, "Doesn't matter what you choose. When you pass through, you'll find your own personalized message." She says, horse mucking nonsense. But she goes inside, and a trigger warning here, she sees the ghost of her father who apparently died by suicide. And there's a somewhat graphic
Not
depiction of
not
that.
her
Or
father.
no, I'm sorry, not her father. I'm so sorry.
It's her
Not her father. I was
principal.
misremembering. It is her principal that she apparently accused of some things, and it
And
got
he
him.
he took his own life.
Yes. So, everybody's got these dark secrets, but when the preacher looks in, he doesn't see Ada confronting this principal. He sees her being sort of like
Overcome by
in
these
her face. Yeah,
tendrils.
these tendrils going through her face of this huge, gnarly, like insectoid, weird tentacle lizard demon thing. It looks great.
It's awesome.
And the preacher's like, "How did you do that?" And they kind of explain, well, we actually did summon some demons. Our names are Abaddon and Zabraxis, which I think we've gotten their full names before.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, oh, the exit is over there. But who should show up but Spawn, who has suddenly become aware of Ab and Zab, of course.
Well, and they were kind of worried about this too, because they had said, you think he's going to be mad? And it felt like, were they talking about the Reverend? And then you realize, like, nah, they're definitely talking about Spawn.
Who, of course, can sense that hell is now open or whatever. They've opened this portal. And so they're all wrapped up in chains. And Spawn's like, I told you to behave. And Ab says, we tried really, but you can't go against your nature. We're openers. It's what we do. And Spawn says, I understand you're openers. I'm a Hellspawn. You know what I do. There's a call. Please, please don't. From one of the doorways. Spawn looks in. First off, I love this drawing of Spawn on the top panel here.
Yeah, it rules.
His face is so good. I still love Brian Haberlin's Spawn, especially his Spawn face. Spawn says, Wanda, and she's pregnant, and she says, please don't hit me again. Now, as we know, Spawn at least has been shown a vision by the sort of guardian of the universe, the mother of miracles, of him ending Wanda's pregnancy by him through abuse. And it's still not exactly clear how true that is. The fact that it's kind of coming from a demon illusionist here makes me question some of it, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it's this arc will kind of continue to do this. It's going to sort of retcon things or present some it's not going to retcon things. It's going to present some retroactive continuity to contextualize where we're at in the story. I don't like to call that like a straight retcon, because usually that implies that we're rewriting something entirely. In this case, we're giving added context to the relationships that have been presented on the page already, that I don't really think contradict anything necessarily, but they do add some, they do force you to ask questions, because they're not like a perfect fit, but in the interest of trying to tell an interesting story, when you're 170 issues into a book and there are certain avenues that haven't been explored with a character, this is the kind of thing that you do. So, yeah.
So, on that note, let's get into Spawn number 171. Hit me with those credits.
All right. Spawn number 171. Todd McFarlane Image Comics present A Tale of Three Brothers, Part 2, Remembrance. And this has all the same credits, except the cover is by Greg Capullo this time. It's like he's in this like digital painting era that he's in. So it's this cool, like, we see these three young black men, and then we see Spawn in the background. Trade dress still doing its thing. This one dedicated to Jeremy Levin. Do you know who Jeremy Levin is?
I know the name. I can't.
Jeremy Levin is a screenwriter and director.
Okay. I was going to say, I thought he was a screenwriter.
So there's a few things here.
Oh, good.
He wrote a novel called Creator, published in 1980. It was released as a film with the same title in 1985. He was, at the time, a practicing neuropsychiatrist, a theme incorporated into his second novel, Satan, His Psychotherapy and Cure by the Unfortunate Dr. Kassler, JSPS, which became a movie called Crazy as Hell in 2002.
Huh.
He also wrote the screenplays for The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Wow.
The Notebook.
Oh, Jesus.
My Sister's Keeper,
Wow.
And real steel.
No shit. Wow. Real steel. And now they're redoing it as a real Rock'em Sock'em movie with Vin Diesel.
Fucking hell yeah.
Vin Diesel is writing and producing and starring in the Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie.
You want to know why? Because you know what it's about.
Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
No, it's about family.
That's right. You know, in my culture, family kind of means food. That's kind of how we show our love. We show our love through food. It's kind of really important that like we kind of share those things together, and I think that's pretty unique, you know.
That's great. I love that.
Actually,
for you.
in my culture, we hate food.
Well, see, now I'm getting mixed messages.
Well, I need to tell you something. Do you know who Data is?
From Star Trek?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you murder him, that's a crime.
Yeah.
Yep. It was decided in a court of law.
In what, in like the 23rd century?
Yeah, it's one of the best episodes of Star Trek.
Did you just watch that and realize you were wrong about Herbie all along?
No, fuck no. Herbie's nothing like Data. Data is a singular, individual, irreplaceable being. You can't even rebuild him.
I have a question. What about Bicentennial Man?
I don't give a shit about that. That doesn't exist in the real world. So Robin Williams is dead, R.I.P.
Anyway, this Jeremy Levin's Wikipedia was truly a journey.
Yeah.
But in the world of Spawn, we are outside of the Hell House where we meet up with Nyx and she sees the crow and now she's like, oh fuck.
Yeah, like a raven lands on her.
Yeah, he said like he can see through the eyes of like all these creatures. Like, are you the one that got him here? Like, is that how he knew? And
yeah, she says, are you the one that summoned him?
And it seems like she like connects with it and or we're getting her kind of flashback of the moment that he decided.
Has those earthly connections, as it said. And so like, yeah, she kind of follows him in and Spawn is kind of communicating with her through the raven. There's like a psychic connection through him. And I love the drawing there of like the raven's head kind of poking out into the most of the panel, but like its body fades into black. And in the black you have Nyx and Spawn. And Spawn's saying, you know, they're Abaddon and Abraxas are minor demons, but they can be a pain in the ass. It looks like they're trying to create a rift in the barrier I constructed between hell and earth. And Nyx is like, is Spawn in trouble, girl? Is Spawn trapped in the well? And she says, oh, the hell with it. He told me not to stay out of here, but she goes in. She kicks down the door. And she's like, this looks like the set from The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is, of course, a great silent film. And she says, if this turns out to be some kind of sleazy peep show, I'm going to be so pissed. She goes into one of the doors, and what do we see but Al cowering on the floor? And she says, Al, are you all right? And he says, all right. Do you see how you hurt me? You cut me open, thrust needles in my heart. You betrayed me. Did you really think I have forgiven you? He calls her a terrible name, and he says, you think I could ever forgive you for this? And rips open his skin to show his heart under his rib cage. The rib cage with the skull on top of it.
Pretty cool.
From his like cape is sick. And you see his like dead gray heart all stitched together. But we know that this is actually one demon.
Of those big sin eaters. And
with her nascent returning powers, she kind of summons the spirit of Gaia, protector of Earth. She says, Gaia, enter me, help me see through the veil of deception, reveal your truth. And we see one of these sin eaters that looks like, it's just such a weird, cool design with all these like crazy misshapen tentacle spider limbs. And it almost looks like a fucking Tyrannosaurus with fucking what do you call Fleabiac brother eyes, you know?
Plus like a tardigrade kind of like, it's all just
like weird mash of cool shit. And it's saying, feed me. And she takes out her knife, another Bud K special, and says, my sins belong to me, and cuts off its tentacle. Meanwhile,
Yeah, so she comes out and she's yelling at the bird now because she's like, "You let me in here, and I thought you were Spawn, but you weren't Spawn. You were just part of this whole thing." And Ab and Zab are chained up. They're upside down. She's never met them. This is her first time meeting them, so they introduce themselves. And
They
she's
say,
like,
"Hey, doll, can you think you can get us down from here?"
yeah. And she's like, "I actually can't because their Spawn's chained, so I don't have enough power." But then she tries and she does. So she's like,
Well,
"Oh."
don't she does, yeah.
Now this backs up what Spawn was saying earlier, where he was like, "These are parlor tricks. I don't have power." But at
Yeah.
the same time, she's kind of like, "This is weird, though. Something must be up."
So yeah, she holds a knife to Ab's throat, and he says, "Let me guess, you're looking for tall, dark, and moody, aka Spawn." We know he's in his sin hole right now, looking at Wanda, and she's saying, "I pledge myself to you forever, no matter what you've done. Of course, I forgive you." We get a fucking great panel at the top of Spawn looking absolutely just like crushed emotionally, begging her for forgiveness, and his Spawn cape is kind of like almost sort of like billowing out around him in a dreamlike way, more than a nightmarish one. It's almost cloudy more than like shredded. And who comes in but Nyx? And she says, "Get away from her. That isn't Wanda." And Wanda starts to turn. She throws her Bud K special knife into
Right in her
Wanda,
heart.
quote unquote's chest, and the illusion disappears, and we see Spawn is in the grip of one of these sin eaters, and it's really absorbing a lot of power from him. Meanwhile, Nyx is trying to entreat Ab to tell Spawn exactly what they summoned here, and Spawn looking. I've never seen that exact expression on Spawn's face before that we're looking at right here, where it's like a combination of just bewilderment and anger in
Yeah.
this, like, almost like, I can't actually
Listen,
fucking believe this is happening. And he says, "You dared to take Wanda's form and to defile her, you filth." And Spawn does this fucking sick ass punch on such a killer fucking double page
really
spread.
cool.
The colors work so well, the textures, the inks. In the back of this compendium, there are a few pages of Brian Haberlin's like inked art, and it just looks so good. It's like, oh, okay,
I
that's
mean,
why it
listen,
looks so fucking good colored.
he was coloring all the masters for, Capullo and Todd for so long that I'm sure he picked up a thing or two.
Yeah, absolutely.
He becomes a very obvious kind of. The more we've been reading his work, it's just so obvious that he got the job.
Right. Well, and we talked about that several times where it's like, obviously he has a vision of what he wants to do as Spawn, like you said, that's informed by the great masters that he's worked with. And we're kind of breezing through a lot of the art in some ways more than we usually do, but it's beautiful. It
Yeah,
looks
it's really
great
good.
through this whole arc. That's the thing. Sometimes when the art is so standout that it makes the book incredibly fluid to read, it's the story and the plotting that stands out and the
Mm-hmm.
storytelling. And the art just kind of syncs up with it so beautifully that it all is really just one package. And so Haberlin really, really working well here with the colorists. Is that
Even
just
after
is it just what's his name is a colorist on this one?
Andy Troy.
Uh Andy Troy. Okay,
Yeah.
different one than I was thinking.
Oh, you were thinking J Photos.
J Photos. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Who was doing
Uh,
production for a long time.
yeah. After this awesome double page spread, which my favorite part of the double page spread is the like he bops the Sin Eater in the eye, so one of his
Yeah.
eyes is closed and stuff, and his like tongue is hanging out.
There goes
And
Mercy.
yeah, and this next page rules. Like this is another
This
instance of
whole
like
sequence.
yeah, there's another instance of just like a really good sequence from Haberlin. I think the other thing is, I think when artists are a little bit more realistic, it's easier for us to breeze through things because one, the sort of craziness of like an Angel Medina page where like Angel Medina draws this sequence way different and it's like
And the
much more
colors would treat it
distended
very
and
differently.
yeah, exactly. Whereas this has this desaturated, kind of grounded feel in both its line art and its colors, but I think it
And it
really
works
suits
so well together.
it really suits this this sequence. But so it's saying mercy,
It says
mercy.
mercy, and Spawn says just quietly, no mercy, as he uses its own tendril to kind of like disembowel it. Like he grabs the kind of like organs that are
so
like
gross,
taking the sin into it.
Fucking
and
rules.
It's awesome. Just the way he also just says no mercy. Like it's not like a big moment. And then he goes, how many more? And he grabs Ab and he says, how many more? And he says 3, I guess, 1 for your girl and and for the lady there. And then there's the preacher and that God bothering skank, which he uses that word a lot throughout here. We get a few skanks and stuff. Not the best. And Spawn is like, if you're lying, if there are more of these things loose. And they explain that it only comes when they summon it by giving it a victim, and that its sigils keep it in
the
sort
doors,
of the contained doors.
Essentially, These are portals to where the Sin Eaters feed, essentially, which is cool. It's a cool, honestly, cool concept. Having fun with it.
And so Ada there is being just like absolutely devoured because of the sins of her past that we now know about, her secret shame and her accusations against, the principal of her school. And Spawn is like, you fed on your last victim, you scum-sucking shit. Now you're going to show me. I want to see what your sins look like. And Spawn just like rips him apart with his chains until he gets down to just this kind of larva inside. And he just squishes it, throws it on the ground, and stomps it. And we realize that what it is all these babies that are like baby sin eaters. And there's this is such a weird fucking horror movie moment where the sin eater is like, spare them, Hellspawn, they are without sin. And Spawn says, then let's keep it that way, and just obliterates them with these rays of energy. At the same time, he goes to find the last one, and who should be in the room but the preacher. And the preacher is praying. He's saying, wash me thoroughly from my wickedness and cleanse me from my sin. And the sin eater, who is in the form of a man we don't recognize, is saying, good boy, let it all out. And the guy looks over and says, well, now look who's here. Stop your sniveling and look. And Spawn, we get yet another great, like, just Spawn shocked look in his eyes where he says, Richard? And he says, have you come to take me? I repented. I turned from sin. I'm saved, aren't I? And Nick says, Al, do you know this man? And Spawn says, know him. Oh, God, yes. He's my little brother. And the guy is saying, the preacher is just praying, Lord, have mercy, Christ, upon us. And Nick is like, your brother? And Richard is like, Al died years ago. They killed him.
We've been very complimentary of the art to this point. That one panel of Nick's is a little bit funny.
It is, yes, where she's like, your brother, with her hands up by her face.
Dun, dun, dun.
This guy, very Greg Capullo looking, the kind of mystery man that's serving as the...
kind of looks like the Freak a little bit, but...
Yeah, but what it is Spawn actually had 2 brothers. It was, Al, Richard, and what's the other one? Michael?
Marcus.
Marcus, thank you. Yes. And they kind of explain that the guy that's there is a vagrant that they all murdered. And we get this final splash page where it's the preacher, Richard, sitting in front of the guy who's covered in stab wounds with a knife that's all bloody. And it says, next, a tale of 3 brothers.
Yeah. So there it is. And on next week's episode, we'll finish up this arc. But I feel like we can get right into final thoughts. This has been 2 pretty breezy issues overall. And I like we said, it is largely because I think that the art puts the plot forward, makes the story plot forward. It doesn't really bog us down. It's really, really clear storytelling.
No, the art is great. And, these issues were easy and fun to read. I felt a little weird about them the first time I read them because it's kind of like, okay, Sin Eaters. But ultimately, by the time we got through these 2 issues, I was like, I like this. Ab and Zab are working for me here. The Sin Eater concept is a cool thing that makes like a good 2-shot villain,
Sure.
really. I like Nyx's involvement as kind of Spawn's foil. We always like when Spawn has a good foil. Nyx is really working right now. Angela is my favorite,
There's also a bit of Hine getting to, all right, we broke everything. We broke all the toys, right? We're now going to rebuild everything. Much like Spawn has already rebuilt the world, we get to now go on this journey of discovery with him to find out how he built it back wrong, right? And
Right.
we get to find out, like, what does it mean when somebody who is not perfect rebuilds everything? Can they fix it? So it's just interesting to get these characters back on board, to be like, oh yeah, what were Ab and Zab up to? Oh, here they are now, right? And yeah, it is adding back to the mythos of the book to be like, okay, here's the check-in with all these characters so that you can know kind of where we stand.
We've talked in the past about Spawn working as intended. Like a comic that's good to read, that gets out there every month with cool stuff in it, that you want to pick up the next issue. This is what bread and butter comics, superhero comics, have been like for so long. You have these building plot lines that kind of start, with new eras. There's a turning of the wheel. But what happens is when they're really doing well, we mentioned Space Ghost earlier, you're getting issues and you're getting arcs that are telling you a story that are fun to read, fulfilling, and they don't need to be like everything changes in this moment. They just need to be, the story is really good and you'll like the art and you'll feel like you got a complete chapter of something.
Yeah. Well, and what's fun here too is that Hine gets to pull in a brother, add an extra one, and say, what about this? Now, the
Just
arc has kind of,
classic soap opera shit, really.
yeah, the arc has kind of been foreshadowing this because it's called A Tale of Three Brothers, and we hadn't seen any brothers.
Right.
And so, maybe it shouldn't have been called that to sort of
Well,
hide.
there's a lot of kind of ways it could be interpreted in Spawn.
Sure,
Could be the Fleabiac brothers, you
true.
know?
Could
Could
be
be
Ab and
Cain and
Zab
Abel in
have
some way. Could be Ab
could be
and
Ab and
Zab.
Zab having a third brother, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
always that. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to take it. And I think that's really fun. I think that one of the things that we said when we got out of Armageddon was that it feels like Hine had finally gotten unburdened by the weight of the overarching sort of gigantic stakes narrative, and that it's on some level he was a bit of a mercenary, needing to be like, I don't know, you have to figure this out and make it work. And we have a few things that we want to take off the table. We have a few things that we want to put back on the table and, get it done. And I think his previous work as his work in comics, but also as a screenwriter and stuff probably does make him perfectly suited for it. David
Well,
Hine,
yeah.
his career, almost Mantlo-esque, I would say, in the sense that he just kind of works on if you look at what he's worked on, you're like, oh, he worked on everything. Do you remember all that much of it? Maybe not, but he definitely has his fans,
Well, and I don't need every comic, again, to be the most memorable comic I've ever read.
Right.
I think there's an expectation on some level among modern fans that every issue is going to be like such a stunning thing. And it's like, it doesn't have to be. Again, we've talked at length about reviewing and critical philosophies and like rankings and numbers. A 7 or an 8 is a perfectly good comic book issue. That's a
Yeah.
good comic.
Yeah.
And not everything has to be a 10. There's a tendency to see anything but a 10 or a 1 as just a cop out.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, sometimes a comic has value and it's not earth shattering.
I definitely have a lot of comics that are 6s and 7s to me that I've gone back and read more times than 9s and 10s.
Well, sure. I mean, if you think about a sitcom, right? Another form of, at least in America, serialized storytelling.
Sure.
If you're going back and rewatching a 22 episode season, you're going to love 5 of those. You're going to think 12 are great. You're going to think 4 are fine. And the rest you're going to be like, yeah, whatever. They're there.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
watching them. It's just kind of like whatever. You watch a lot of stuff that isn't the peak of its medium,
Also,
and you
too,
probably love it.
all media on some level, all art is you only get out of it as much as you kind of put into it,
Sure,
right? If you are somebody who, I think we see this with like cult films all the time,
sure.
where maybe it was like critically panned, but like you watched it at a very important time in your life and glommed onto it and just loved it. And I don't know, my favorite superhero is Darkhawk.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
Well,
like
okay, we tend to like things. What I'm going to say right now will tie into my later recommendations. My cat is going fucking apeshit right now. Sometimes what we respond to is media that lets us feel disconnected from certain aspects of our reality
mhm,
and engrossed in others. I'll get into that more with my recommendation in a second,
sure,
actually.
sure.
But I think these issues are what Spawn kind of should be, what comics should be. They should have cool art that you love looking at. They should have a story that takes you in and tells you something about the characters. And ideally, they move the plot forward somehow.
Absolutely. I think that again, especially with like episodic storytelling like this is, that is the goal. Moving the chains, pardon the pun, is the goal in most cases. And I want an engaging beginning, I want a middle that moves, and I want a satisfactory ending.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you will have a long, long, long career in comics.
Yeah, you'll do great.
So, and you never need to write fucking Watchmen.
Well,
It's cool if you do, but
yeah, sure. Exactly. Well, I mean, even the guy who wrote Watchmen doesn't kind of love that he wrote Watchmen at this
well,
point. So on that note, we mentioned at the top that we got some fan letter,
we did get a
some
letter.
fan mail.
We
So
did get a
let's
letter.
do some Spawnography back matter. It's been a
Yeah.
while since we did Spawn back matter because, again, we're
These
getting
issues
the
are
era where
expensive.
issues are hard to get. So we're reading out of
Which
the collections.
I'll say this again: if you have extra issues that we haven't covered yet,
Get in touch.
or that we have that are like reader copies that I can buy from you, I will 100% buy them from you. Just email
get
me
in
at
touch.
spawnographypod@gmail.com. Anyway, we got an email. The subject was fan mail, and it says, "Hi, I am 14 years old and I've been listening since episode 1. I have some questions. 1.
Now, I want to say, first off, hold on one second. This person does refer to us by masculine pronouns in this email, but I think it's part of the I'm 14 and this is my first time writing a letter bit.
Exactly. Yes, I agree. 1, why do you guys always talk about X-Men on the Spawn podcast? Which we did again. 2, Pierce keeps saying there's only 3 Star Wars movies. If you didn't already know, there are at least 9 movies. He should really educate himself before putting misinformation out there. Noted. 3.
Wait, hold on. I've only heard of the 3.
I didn't know there were 9. Maybe they're fan films. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
3.
Maybe it's on Star Trek.
Maybe. 3. During the Summer of Hellspawn arc, George told Pierce that he loved him while arguing about the Fantastic Four movie. Are they going to get married? If so, that plot line is really dragging. Are you waiting for a milestone episode?
Love that one.
So,
listen,
to answer these questions, 1, we always talk about X-Men because we fucking love the goddamn X-Men.
It's the Rosetta Stone of comics. I made the joke about the Rosetta Stone earlier, but it really is the Rosetta Stone of comics in the sense that you can watch it from the beginning to now and see, much like with Spawn, the history of like a certain era and type of comics, really what the sort of most successful mainstream comic ever really looks like.
There is no creator in the history of comics who's gotten to do his job for basically 2 decades.
In a mainstream big 2 comic.
Right. And like, I understand that like comics were not as mainstream as they are now, in the sense that there were not the films and the MCU and all that.
No, when we say
However,
mainstream comics, we mean Marvel, DC,
no,
non-independent
yeah,
comics.
but to get to tell a story in a corporate, essentially a corporate setting,
Yeah.
for 2 decades in an industry that is notorious for not having job security. I mean, now Chris Claremont's on an exclusive Marvel contract, but there was a time during his 17 years where he wasn't. There were times where he battled with editors over what he wanted to do. There were times when editors straight up told him, "This is what we're doing. Either change your story and roll with it, or get
We'll
off the
get someone who
book."
will. I mean,
And
the return of Jean Grey being kind of the pinnacle example.
absolutely. And funny that we were talking about Morrison earlier, and to Morrison's like, Claremont burn. After that, don't care.
Yeah.
Which kind of wild to think about, because when I think of Claremont, that's not even. I mean, I love Byrne, but like his art, but like I'll rank that part of the Claremont run low. Anyway, so yeah, we always talk about X-Men also because it just
I think of like Paul Smith, JR Jr., Dave Cockrum. The Canadian's fine.
Silvestri. I mean, some really great stuff.
Chris Claremont calls John Byrne the Canadian.
And then Sienkiewicz over on New Mutants.
Of course. I mean, there's so much great talent.
The Simonsons both on X Factor. Anyway, I could talk about Walt Simonson forever. There are only 3 Star Wars movies, but I guess I'll try and watch these other ones that you say exist. And George hasn't set a date yet, so.
Well, look, I'm just going to say this, okay? I've been married once before. I've probably talked about having an ex-wife on this podcast. I was married. We had a long relationship. And Pierce, we've kind of had this conversation back and forth, and maybe our ideas about it will change. But I think the two of us have kind of settled on, we're in a lifelong partnership, and we don't need a piece of paper to tell us that. That's other true. Than our Spawnography ratings, which are doing great. Thank you so much, Spawn Unity. We're so happy to have you with us.
Yeah. The letter does continue. Okay, joke's over. I just wanted to give you some classic 14-year-old style back matter of your own.
Yeah.
In reality, I'm George's age and started listening to your pod over the holidays when I had some time off work. I've been interested in checking out Spawn again since hearing about the universe expansion, but it had been about 10 years since I read Spawn, and I knew I'd have to start from the beginning. Finding your podcast gave me the push to get started, and listening to y'all along the way is so fun. As a working dad with no real comic friends anymore, podcasts like yours are such a great addition to the reading hobby. It's the closest thing to being back hanging out at the shops when I was younger. You know the industry and the history. You have great discourse and values and awesome guests. I couldn't believe when I heard an episode and you said you didn't get much mail. So I wanted to make sure you knew how much I appreciate your show. Still a little behind on the pod, but well ahead on the reading. I'm up to 250 right now. But I also want to say, if no one else has, that I want Summer of Sam and Twitch, especially if it has a new theme song.
Someone asked.
For Todd to Love the World, E. Well, as with pretty much everything on this. Yeah, thank you so much, E. We really appreciate it. I did respond to E and said, thank you for the kind words, hilarious letter. We really appreciate you being a listener. Sounds like we have to figure out Summer of Sam and Twitch now, as we are powerless against the will of our listeners. I think that listeners don't understand that we will do what we're told. Like, if they want it.
We have real Submariner energy. We're not, neither of us is a Dom Mariner.
Call us no more.
Yeah, they got a Subway in New York. They don't got a Domway.
But sincerely is a good
sincerely,
E, thank you for the letter. And I was talking to George about this, about the numbers, about the stats earlier, and like, I know we're not the biggest podcast in the world, but it is just so wonderful to hear from people. And so, hey, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I should send a letter, you should.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll read it. Just don't be mean to us.
Have kind things to say. I want to say it really, that note actually meant a lot to me. And there was one thing that I think really stood out to me in the serious part of the letter that I really appreciated, which is the feeling of a comic book shop conversation. I've been covering and writing about comic books for God, since
40 years.
Close. I mean, well, look, covering it in terms of like publishing, self-publishing since 2007 or 8, and then working for Newsarama into my current position since 2009. And so my goal for my writing through all of that truly has been that exact thing. And especially as I've been allowed to develop more of an individual voice as a writer, that's something I talk to with about my editors all the time, about how what I want to foster is the idea of a comic book shop conversation where you're getting in there and just having a fun time. We've talked about this in the pod. I've said that 50 times this episode. We've talked in the pod plenty of times about how part of what's really important to us about spawnography in general is times where we can have a disagreement about something as clear cut as whether Herbie deserves human rights.
He does.
And we can still come out and say I love you, because ultimately these are matters of taste. They're matters of critical opinion. They're matters of creativity. And it's gratifying to have even sometimes difficult conversations with people you can trust about those things, and people you know are having those conversations in good faith, in the sense that they're not just going to turn it into some weird screed that you're suddenly going to have to navigate. Like, I love that comment, and I really appreciate it. And I think that speaks very strongly to my goals as a person involved in some way in the comic industry.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that too, I used to be a Wednesday warrior. I used to have my pull list. You know, if I go into my old comic shop, they still remember me, but I don't go in there as much anymore, as I've kind of transitioned to more digital comics and stuff. Shame on me on some level, but yeah, there is. I don't know. I just love chopping it up at the shop. Like it's the best.
Oh, absolutely.
I love arguing about dumb bullshit.
It's the only way to live when you're a comic fan.
I love like my brother and I both were Marvel interns, but he was a Marvel intern because he was like, I like these characters, but I don't care to read comic books. And but always whenever there's a new movie or something, he's always like, who the fuck's Sentry? And I'm like, all right, how long are we running for? And he'll be like 17 miles. I'm like,
that's
great.
A significant portion of my job is who the fuck is Sentry.
But yeah, so, and also too, a large part of the reason that we do this show and have continued 2 years of this show now, over 100,
amazing.
110 episodes at this point, is that I get to chop it up with one of my best friends every single week.
Exactly.
And
I think of all our listeners as friends as well. And if you are getting that kind of satisfaction from listening to us, that's great. I mean, I really appreciate that. I've had that experience with media and podcasts and stuff as well, where just you really need to feel like you're in a conversation, or at least a part of something. And so that's really cool. Spawn Munity, you're doing great. We love you. The Spawn community, Spawn Munity.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've made it
absolutely
work.
Cool. Before we go, George, do you have any recommendations for our listeners this week?
I do, and it's actually something that really sums up kind of everything we've been talking about in a lot of ways, which is ironic because I had it in mind for my recommendation long before we started this conversation, which is it's a documentary, the movie Trekkies from 1997, Trekkies. It is about the Star Trek fandom community, and even if you don't give a shit about Star Trek, it's an amazing documentary because everyone in it is just so vivid and queer and cool and weird and disabled and from all walks of life, people of like every race and nationality and all these different kinds of things. It is a movie from 1997 that has visibly trans and queer people in it who are not interrogated about their identity whatsoever. They are only asked to talk about their passions. And I think that's so powerful because also one of the things that the biggest running theme through it is when I watch Star Trek, my cat jumps on my guitar. When I watch Star Trek, I feel like I can be part of a world where I'm equal, where I'm accepted,
Mm.
where my level of physical ability is not a hindrance to my participation in society, or even your mental and psychological capabilities. They're not a hindrance to your participation, and neither are those hindrances to fandom. And it's a movie that's full of like weird, kooky characters that are just, it would be easy to just laugh at them, but when you really accept that, like, no, it's actually important that we get to talk to people who are like kind of obviously autistic about Star Trek, who are like just so passionate. And I watched it last night, and it was just really beautiful to me to see again the thing that made me fall in love with that movie, and in turn fall in love with Star Trek, is just that sense of belonging and community. It's a hot button topic right now because there's all the fucking like, oh, Star Trek's woke now. And it's like, man,
If you think
if you
Star
think
Trek's
that
woke
Star Trek's
now,
never
you
been for
missed
you,
you missed the boat on what Star Trek is. Where can people watch this? Is it easy to watch?
anywhere really, I guess. I hate to say that it's most easy to watch on Paramount Plus,
Okay.
because fuck Paramount, they're awful, and there's like a lot of worry that they're gonna turn it into some fucking horrible shit. But you know, you can always find ways to watch stuff. It's pretty easy to get on DVD, pretty
Hmm.
easy to get like the whole series across different DVDs. I highly recommend it. But honestly, just watch Trekkies. It's free on YouTube. If you come
That's
away
what I
from
was
that,
asking about.
oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you meant
That's
Star
fine.
Trek. I was just thinking in general. I thought you were
Yeah.
being a smart aleck. Like, I've never heard of Star Trek. Where can
No, no,
people
no. I
watch
was
it?
asking
Because
about
we
where
did
to
the
watch the
no.
documentary.
Trekkies is free to watch on YouTube.
Cool.
There's an official free release on YouTube, and it's just such a beautiful, heartwarming, and affirming movie. If you come away from it not liking Star Trek or not being interested in Star Trek, then so be it. But if you come away from it not getting Star Trek, I don't know what to tell you. And you know, we talked just now about the spawnography, kind of spawnographers being on this journey with us, the spawn community. There's a debate about Trekkie versus Trekker, and Kate Mulgrew in that documentary says something I like, which is Trekkies are people who are, you know, along for the ride. They enjoy the show, they're watching, maybe participating on some level, but Trekkers are going along with them, walking along with them into these paths of discovery and learning and stuff. And I like that. I mean, it's just a silly thing about Star Trek fans, but it is maybe the last bastion of healthy fandom that I can think of, is that movie. And so I highly recommend it. I also recommend, as a side note, you can check out my band Lost Cigarette on Bandcamp or YouTube. Just go to coolbutrude.com and you'll hear our music. We're working on recording some new stuff right now.
Hell yeah. And you have another project maybe
I
maybe
do. It's called
dropping.
Witch Crisis, and you can check out the songs that I've already released also on YouTube, just Witch Crisis, um, at witch.crisis, I think.
Is there a band
Uh,
camp for that too?
Yes, but it doesn't have everything on it. Just check out my
Gotcha.
YouTube.
Okay. We'll link it
And
in
I've got
the
some new stuff coming.
notes.
So yeah, if you want to hear my music.
Awesome. My recommendation this week. Oh, I had something and then I completely lost it.
Wow, what are
Oy.
you, me?
Sometimes
Yeah.
what was I
Was
listening
it
to today?
M&M's?
No, it wasn't M&M's,
Well,
but hey,
I don't know what to tell
that's a
you.
that's a good suggestion. No, a really great band. They're called A Place for Owls. I
Oh
was
yeah, I
listening to
think
them
you've told me
today.
about them.
Yeah, I really, 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 really love a record they put out. I mean, they keep putting out great records. Don't get me wrong, but they put out a record. What exactly year was it? Self-titled in like 2021, 2022. It is just one of the most lovely emo records of the last few years. It really helped me get through the pandemic. Highly, highly recommend the song "Do You Feel at Home Here." Got to know them a little bit over the internet when we were both promoting each other's bands. But if you
There
like
you
the
go.
Hotelier, Manchester Orchestra, Foxing, Sufjan Stevens, Jimmy Eat World, Death Cab for Cutie, they did a short tour with Switchfoot at one point because, like me,
Wow.
they are also religiously traumatized emo heads. So yeah, if
There
you
you
dig
go.
that, aplaceforowls.bandcamp.com. Buy all their shit. It's very affordable and very worth it. They're really cool. They're really nice people. But on that note, that's all we got. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. Send us a fucking email. We'll read it.
Yeah, we'll read it.
Sponographypod@gmail.com. Send it to us. Be nice, please. Don't.
Yeah.
I don't want you to be mean.
Just
I mean, I
be
guess
cool, dude. Just
do
be
whatever you
cool.
want, but that's it for this one. Next week we'll finish out this arc. We got Gunslinger coming up. We'll be covering that with Mark Novak, aka Tiny Spawny, who's got Let's Talk Spawn over on YouTube.
Another member of the Spawn community.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have him on, and one of the biggest Gunslinger fans. So I'm excited for him to drop some lore on us.
Nice.
And as always, we're always working on some fun stuff in the background. I guess we got to plan Summer of Sam and Twitch, which I did not have in our plans.
But we'll
see. That might delay the end of Al Simmons a little bit, but we'll see. I got to figure it out.
How it goes. We got a
yeah,
couple months.
We have the compendium anyway, so
I do have the Sam and Twitch compendium.
Yeah, we'll figure out exactly what we want to cover.
Maybe we could read a chunk of it, or we'll see.
We'll see what works. I don't like the reason Hellspawn was perfect was because it was basically just the summer to cover all of it. So I think
we'll see what we can do. I would love to cover some Sam and Twitch stories at the very least.
I agree. And we've only covered Sam and Twitch or Case File Sam and Twitch. I don't know. There's both of those exist. It doesn't matter. We're not getting into it right now. But anyway, George, before we go, for Todd to love the world.
He gave his only begotten Spawn.
See you later, Hellspawn.
Spawnography!
Spawnography is recorded in Athens, Georgia, and Queens, New York. It's produced by me, Pierce Ladden. Our theme music and logo were composed by George Marston. Episodes come out every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. You can find us on social media at Spawnography or at SpawnographyPod. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at SpawnographyPod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, see you later, Hellspawn.